Hello everybody, my Overwatch gamers, and welcome to another video where we're back in the practice range, also known as Nebula's domain. And of course, as is my tradition, we are going to be storm arrowing poor old soldier out of oblivion, and I just realised my latency. What the hell? Okay, well, we're going to have to reload the domain. The domain was not happy with me existing. So we have reloaded it, and now the domain has welcomed me. So we're going to do the intro again, for no reason. Say hello once again to the old man, as we storm arrow him out of existence. And welcome to the next Halloween Horrors Hero Concept video. Today we're doing the DPS, and I have a bit of a awkward one to do, because I just recorded Spirit. Wait, damn it. Well, okay, I'm releasing both of these videos at the same time, but whoops, the healer is called Spirit, and I just re-recorded that video, and I called her the third one, and then I went to after recording it, I went to put together the video for this character, Symphony, which you can read the title. And as I was, as I went to edit the video to do my little tiny bits of editing that I do, I realised it had corrupted. So yay, it was gone. I've got to remake it now. So this is actually the second hero, but recorded after the third hero, but it is going to remain on the second one, but it's also the last one that I ever made, so... Yep. I see no problems. So yeah, there's nothing, there's no way to, learn without learning, and there's no way without making mistakes without making mistakes. I think that's how the saying goes. We're going to begin today. Welcome to the hero concept, the Halloween Horrors collection. It's Symphony. She is going to be the DPS character. And yeah, she's going to be the DPS character, and size-wise, she is going to be quite small. Imagine her as a little bit bigger than Tracer. Not much, as if Tracer was sort of standing upright is what I would sort of roughly estimate her size. The stats are going to be 200 health, no armor, and no shield. So Symphony is quite vulnerable. She is only 200, which I believe is roughly what Widowmaker has. Yes, it is. And so, yeah, it's pretty scary, low amounts of health. You are quite vulnerable to being dove, but you're going to see why she has such low health, because it's not because she has the mobility of Tracer. So, starting off, we are going to be continuing the blood trend from Howl with a passive, and her passive is called Blood Hunt. Which I actually just realised. Is that the same the name of the passive as... We're going to pretend that Howl's passive is called something else. Sue me. Essentially, become crazed when you bleed a hostile, gaining 100% increase to fire rate, moving 20% faster, and being able to see bleeding hostiles through walls. This passive is... I'm going to have to check and see if that's, like, actually the same as Howl's. I think it actually... I'm pretty sure they're both called Blood Hunt. Yes, they're both called Blood Hunt. And they can both see bleeding targets through walls, but Howl's is healing, and, Symphony's is to do with fire rate and movement speed. Well, you're going to have to just suck it up, and I guess if Blizzard you actually take this design, try and name them something else. But yeah, this is the idea. If someone's bleeded, you can see them. This will synergize with Howl's bleeds, and of course, it will also synergize with Junker Queen's bleeds and any other bleeds that get introduced into the game. That's at least the idea. The primary fire of Symphony is called Blood Draw. Rapidly throw knives, dealing heavy damage and bleed over time, and extended duration. So, the English there. What you are reading is not that terrible English, but that's what I've got at the moment, so that's what I've read. You throw a heavy knife every second, doing 85 damage per throw. This will bleed targets for 24 additional damage over 8 seconds. So that is 3 damage per second, which, if you didn't realise, is a tiny amount of damage. But it does it over 8 seconds, which means they will be bleeding for 8 seconds for each knife you hit them. This isn't supposed to really be a huge damage, amplifier. It's, 24 over 8 seconds is hardly any notable amount of damage. However, it does mean that technically, I believe, no, it doesn't mean anything. So, ooh, does it? Anyway, but yeah, the point is that it keeps them bleeding for up to 8 seconds, which means you get that 100% increase to fire rate, and you throw a knife once per second. So after you hit someone for the next 8 seconds, you will shoot 2 knives per second, which is double your DPS essentially, and you get to move 20% faster. So the bleed is meant to just be a lingering bleed. She carries 10 knives, and she reloads she can reload them over 1.2 seconds. Sorry, my English has just gone out the window today. Yeah, that's I guess what we're just dealing with. So, is there any notable things about this? No, not really. I think the idea is, yeah, 1 headshot and 1 body shot will kill a standard hero. So she can decimate people or kill people in 1 second if she gets the 2 knives. My logic behind this style of weapon is it's going to feel, it doesn't throw the same as these, but it's going to feel similar-ish as Kiriko. Mostly because I've always felt that this knife is a very DPS style weapon. It's a duelist's weapon as far as I'm concerned. It's not really a support's weapon. In my opinion, support damage should be what I call supporting damage. Someone with good supporting damage weapon would be something like, I think, Moira's supporting damage is pretty good because it's not huge. It's not going to win her duels, but it does, tap people. Same with Anna. I think this is good supporting damage. It's not ridiculously quick to down everyone, but it does, meaningful support damage to the point that you do want to actually be shooting players. I think Juno is another good example. Whereas I feel like Kiriko's knives are very duelist focused. You can easily win duels with these. So I think that having a DPS character with this type of weapon would be nice. So, moving on. Symphony's alternate fire is called Haunting Imagery. Essentially, this is what you do. Essentially is another word I'd like to say less. Take a terrifying form of shadow to strike fear into all that see you, granting you movement speed and damage reduction for a short time. This is on a 12-second cooldown, so you can't use it ridiculously often. But imagine a light Reaper form. So this is how Reapers currently works. You pop this, and for 3 seconds, you cannot be damaged, you can't be touched, you move quicker. This makes you move 40% faster, but you are not invulnerable to damage. You just take 75% less damage for 2 seconds. This means that you can use it, peek a corner, and you've literally got 2 seconds where you're taking 75% less damage, so someone needs to make sure they don't take a duel in that time. Or you can use it to disengage and get back around a corner. Let's say we're all disengaging here. You can use this to take a lot less damage and get around the corner. I've thought about downing it to 50% less damage, and that could be fair, because 2 seconds is quite a long time in a duel. You could just push around a corner in this and then just annihilate them. Whilst they'd have no chance to fight you. So yeah, I think the number could be down a little bit. maybe 50% less damage taken, or maybe even something closer to like 30% less damage taken, because that's still a significant damage reduction if you're thinking that Zen's Orb is about the same as that, right? So this is designed as her survivability option, because she does only have 200 health, so she does get, you know, she does get killed quite quickly. But the reason I do think that that's a bit good is because of the next part of her kit, which really is meant to be her main tool for not dying or staying safe. And that's going to be Symphony's first ability, which is called Blood Hunt. Teleport to a bleeding hostile as a apparition or haunt them with a haunting shadow. This is actually quite a complicated ability, even though the description there was quite short. We're going to be explaining it in its entirety. So, essentially, when you press the button, you will do a sort of interim cast. So, like this. You press the button, you can see Reaper puts his shotguns down, and you get like a cast thing. Now, hers, once you press it, you have 3 seconds to either left-click or right-click. And if you don't, then the ability just ends, and you can press it again. If you primary, when you do this, you will, when you press this, for all bleeding enemies, so anyone that's bleeding, they will begin to hear the Bloodsong, which is a humming. It's a very ominous humming. You know, this is Halloween. Well, it's not Halloween. We're a whole month late for Halloween, but whatever. You know, the idea is that it's a very horror-esque thing. You know the kind of humming I'm talking about, right? The very horror-esque. You know, sort of pretty somber, pretty spooky. So once you press it, you have 3 seconds of humming. Now you can, you know, do left click or right click immediately, or you could let it simmer for a few seconds if you just like the song. That's what happens, and if you do nothing, it goes on a 15-second cooldown. So, you know, you want to pick something. If you left click, whilst you have this, you can see the bleeding targets through walls as per usual. If you look at a bleeding target, an aiming reticle will appear around them, and if you left click, you will teleport to that top. You will teleport within 10 meters of that target. So, for example, you'll immediately, instantly just appear here as a shadow of yourself for 3 seconds. And this shadow has 125 health. If this shadow dies, you return to where you began. If you kill the target, you return to your original position as well, and it will reset the cooldown of this ability. So let's try and just unpack the left click, which is the first function of this. So you press it, and now you've got humming for 3 seconds. You pick your target, which has to be a bleeding target, so you have to have applied a bleed to them somehow. And once you've got that on them, you want to left click, you will teleport to this location, and you will become a shade. This shade will exist for 3 seconds and has 125 health. However, other than that, you have the exact same abilities and skills as you've just explained, which means you can shoot people. The only thing you cannot do in this form, which I haven't actually explained in the text, is use haunting imagery. You can't alternate fire. If you are killed, you return to your original position with however much health you had. Essentially, you create a shade of yourself over there, and then you get to control that shade. Once it dies, you teleport back to here. It's going to be similar to Phoenix from Valorant if you've ever played that game. If you kill the target whilst you are a shade, so whilst you're controlling this 125 health shade, if you kill the target, you will immediately return to your original position, and the ability will go immediately off cooldown. If you are killed, or if the 3 seconds timer runs out, you will return to your original position, and the 15-second cooldown will begin. Whilst the shade exists, the hostile is slowed by 25%. So they can tell that something has teleported them because there'll be like a dark beam connecting the two, and that will also be slowing them down, making them easier for you to kill, and also easier for potentially the rest of your team to chase down. That's the left click. If you use Blood Haunt, and then use the right click whilst looking at a bleeding target, you will not teleport to them. Instead, you will send an apparition of yourself, so you create a shadow of yourself, at that target's, or within 10 meters of that target, which will slow them by 25% whilst it lives, and it has 125 health. It will also last 6 seconds. So it becomes a shade which doesn't attack them, it just slows them down, but it lasts twice as long as you can. It's 6 whole seconds of 25% slower, which is really good for bogging down a target and letting your team catch up. If you were to use it, you can essentially use him to just drain this guy and keep him slowed. Of course, the shade can be killed, and if you use it in that capacity, the cooldown is reduced by 33%. So that's, yeah, the cooldown gets reduced by 33% if you use the right click. So instead of 25%, which means if you use it to haunt someone, it will not have a 15-second cooldown, but instead just be a 12-second cooldown. Because you still got the value of slowing them down for 6 whole seconds, or forcing them to shoot a target. I think the cooldown could reduce a little bit more than 25%. We got. You know what? I'm gonna say 40%. Yeah, 40%, because that reduces it to a 9-second cooldown. Yeah, that sounds about right. So, yeah, that is going to be Blood Haunt, and it is the mainstay of Symphony's kit. It's designed to be your harassment tool. Essentially, you don't have much health, so you want to shoot from a distance to try and get bleeds applied onto targets, and then you want to hide around the corner and then use your Blood Haunt to teleport to the enemy and attempt to kill them for 3 seconds, or use it when your team is about to push to make a target even more out of position. Let's say the Ramatra pushes up a tad bit too much. You can slow him down with that thing for up to 6 seconds. It doesn't care about line of sight so long as it's still alive. It will always spawn within line of sight. So, for example, if you were to teleport here, or if you were to cast it here to this guy, the thing cannot spawn here. It has to spawn either here, 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 somewhere within line of sight of the enemy that it's teleporting to. Same goes for you. But yeah, this is her main way of not dying. She just sends clones of herself with much less health. They cannot use haunting imagery. Actually, you know what? They can't use any ability. They can only use the primary fire. So you just have to try and get some damage down. But you know, as you know, 2 hits, a headshot and a body shot, and that is the end of someone. And you're shooting every half a second. So, you know, it's quite potent. I'm tempted to down the health to 75, just so that it's really easy to kill these ghosts. At 125, it might just be a tad too difficult, but that's not much health. So I'm going to leave it at 125 for now, but that's Blood Haunt. She is terrifying, because if she hits you with a knife from a distance, now she gets to hide round a corner and immediately take a fight with you, where you have no chance of killing her. So yeah, absolutely scary, scary, scary ultimate. It's not even an ultimate, just an ability. Now, this is an ability that her Shade can't use. Remember, her Shade can only primary fire. But her second ability is called Flurry of Blades. Toss a flurry of knives which rapidly return to you after the duration ends. So, you press in the same way, just this is actually going to be very similar to Storm Arrow. I know, sue me. When you press Storm Arrow, a timer elapses, and that is your time to fire the arrows. If you do not fire the arrows in time, you can see the Storm Arrow ends and it goes on cooldown. Flurry of Blades works the same way. You have 3 seconds to throw up to 10 knives at 5 knives per second. So it's super fast fire rate of knives. You can fire 5 knives per second, which means you can throw all 10 of them in just 2 seconds, but you have 3 seconds to toss them. So as soon as you press it, you do want to shoot them pretty quickly, but you've got a whole second that you can use to maybe just make sure that you're not going to miss a shot or 2. These knives will only do 40 damage each, as opposed to the 85 of the other ones. And these ones do not bleed enemies, I don't think. Maybe they should, but for the moment, let's just say they don't. These are capable of headshots, so you can do 80 damage per knife, which does mean that you can just kill someone super quickly. This is 200 DPS, essentially. And of course, if you get headshots, well, it's 400 DPS. But, I mean, Hanzo, you can see Storm Arrow. This is actually why I got the Storm Arrow out right at the start, because I just wanted people to be aware that, yes, this is a high burst ability, but these kind of abilities are in the game already. You can see just how quickly Hanzo can decimate one standard health target. I don't think that this Flurry of Blades is going to do it insanely quicker, so you can see just how quickly there's no chance at all for that soldier. And I think that Flurry of Blades will be fine in that regard. I think it's much weaker than Storm Arrow. However, these knives will actually pass through all hostiles up to 40 meters away. So once again, I will get my little thing out so you can see roughly 40 meters. There it is. So the knife will travel all the way out to there, and each enemy that it passes through will take 40 damage. You can only crit the first guy that you hit, though. Once the 3 seconds ends, or once you've thrown all of your knives, you will call them back to you, which will all rapidly return to your hand, doing 40 damage to all enemies they pass through. One hero can only be struck by 3 knives on the return. So the idea is, if I was to do my Storm Arrow like this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then afterwards 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 would all get called in a straight line directly back to me, and would do 40 damage to anyone that they pass through on the return. So, how strong is this ability? Well, it's quite a strong burst ability, and of course, if the enemies line up for it, it's actually a huge amount of damage, because if you consider, you know, Hanzo's Storm Arrow, how much damage that's doing, this isn't as much as that, but it can pass through targets as well. My logic for why this isn't too bad is actually, in 6v6, this could be more problematic, and I might start making my characters to balance around 6v6, but in 5v5, people are quite spread out. If you actually consider that Ramatra's Pummel usually can only pummel 1 or 2 people at a time, because people just don't stack on top of the tank all that much, or at least that close to the tank. And these knives are much thinner than Ramatra's Pummel. This is kind of why I actually think that this is going to be okay. I don't think it's actually going to be too much of a problem. And why I think that, yeah, that's why I actually think that this is not too bad. It does have a 14-second cooldown, which is much longer than Storm Arrow as well. Storm Arrows is, you know, back up on just an 8 seconds, so we're 6 seconds longer. But yeah, that's going to be Flurry of Blades. This is her burst ability. This is the ability which says, I really want you dead. And so, you know, it has to do quite a lot of damage quite quickly. And if people stack up, or if you get a grab, that can be absolutely devastating, because it will pass through everything. It doesn't care about Rhine's barrier, bubbles, anything like that. Actually, what did I say? Yeah, change that. Doesn't go through barriers. Scrap. Absolutely insanity I just said there. I realised how stupid it was when I said it out loud. It does not penetrate barriers. The knives will just hit the barrier, and then when you call it back, it will come back to you. So barriers will counter this ability quite well. And finally, Symphony's ultimate ability is called Bloodsong. Haunt all hostiles with dark shadows. Bloodhaunt's cooldown is reduced. Alright, this ultimate is very, once again, simple to say, but it's much more complicated. And I must admit, there is a good chance that I don't think Blizzard, even if they actually took this character, I think this would be the one thing I would definitely say that they would not do. I am an 80% sure that this ultimate would never make it into Overwatch, and I'll explain why after I've done it. So, this has 1600 ult charge, which means you can use it very often. And it will, any enemy hero will have their vision limited to 20 meter radius for the entire duration. Now, I'd say 20 meters is quite big, but this is 20 meter radius, so you, beyond that ring, so here I'd be able to see this guy, but as soon as I do here, there'd just be a wall of shadows surrounding you. Which means that for super long range stuff, I can't see over there, I can't see over there. But in sort of like a more close environment, I would be perfectly good at seeing these two. Relatively speaking, compared to all of the blind-in shadow effects I've seen in all of the games, this is a massive radius compared to the others. So, on top of that, a shadow will haunt each enemy hero for the duration as well. These will slow them by 25% and will do 25 damage per second to them. So, in the same way that Haunting Shadows, in the same way that Bloodhaunt, you know, made the shadows slow you down and they have 125 health, these guys will do exactly the same thing, but you do 5 of them, 1 for each enemy hero. And they will also do 25 damage per second to them, as well as slowing them by 25%. So that's quite a lot of extra health just immediately on the field. They're not immensely overpowered. They do, you know, less damage than Moira. And they do very low amounts of damage, essentially, is what I'm getting at. But it is a big slow for the enemy team. You can just kill them. I mean, 125 damage really isn't a lot to do. Not to mention, they aren't going to be trying to dodge. They aren't PvPers. So that's why, you know, as an example, this is Tracer, which she has more health than them. You can see with just fairly minimal effort, they are just going to get decimated. And if I went for the headshots, you can see it's much quicker. And they don't really attempt to dodge, so they're not going to be too hard to hit headshots, right? So, yeah, the duration of this is going to be 10 seconds, so they are going to have that vision impairment for 10 seconds, and they're going to have the ghosts haunting them for 10 seconds. If they kill the shadow, it's gone. Once it's dead, it's dead. It doesn't respawn throughout the ultimate. However, for this ultimate, Bloodhaunt also has its cooldown reduced to just 5 seconds. Which means that, Symphony can hide at a distance and then just spam Bloodhaunts to keep on attacking them alongside her shadows. It's a very confusing assault. So there's quite a few reasons why I don't think Blizzard is going to do this ultimate. But I'll start with what I like about it. I do like the idea of a vision impairing ultimate which will limit their ability to push into us. I think that having all of these ghosts going around alongside Symphony teleporting in makes for a very confusing environment for the enemies, and I'm a big fan of this this DPS that's quite confusing to play against. Or at least sort of difficult to figure out what the real one is. Like, it's not confusing, you know what she's doing, it's just hard to know which one is the real one. Well, actually, it's not too hard, but you get what I mean. you know, in the heat of the moment, you need to be very quick to figure out which one's the real one. Otherwise, she might just kill you. And I think that it's a good crowd control ultimate. I just think she's a pretty awesome character, and I think I really like the idea of this sort of haunt in shadows. But the reason I don't think it's going to happen is for the reasons that I think... I'm not sure if Blizzard's ever mentioned this, but I'm convinced that the Overwatch team is absolutely set on not having any abilities which impair vision. If you actually look at the characters that have been in the game, even if they have weaponry or items that should really be in vision impairing, they have been incredibly not vision impairing. The perfect example, of course, is the flash grenade from Cassidy. The flash grenade, despite, you know, every other game in the world saying the flash grenade blinds people, that's not the direction Overwatch went. It originally just went with a stun, and it then changed it to a impair or slow. Well, I guess it did some other things in between, but you get the idea. Another good example would be the concussion mines or the concussion blast. We know what other games have seen as concussions. It's very disorientating to play as. But in this game, it's just a knockback. And even when you get frozen by Mei, your screen doesn't really lose all that much impairment. And if you look at it, there's just barely any vision impairment in this game at all. I am convinced that this is an intentional thing, that they just don't like the idea of people not being able to really see what's going on. Because the game is always likes to be, and it's a big pride point of this game, it's very clear and it's very chunky. You see what I mean? Like, everything has nice shape to it. There is a nice wide space here. There is a chunky box there. You know, the art style is very chunky. And I think that if you start introducing vision impairments, it starts to look more blurry and a bit less clean, I think is the term. So yeah, I don't think they'll do it for that reason alone, to be honest with you. I think that on its own is not ideal. And I think the other thing is, I think they tend to avoid confusing characters. And by confusing characters, I mean characters that are hard to really counter. And I'm going to keep one of them confusing characters, but Sombra's infinite invisibility is probably like my best example of this. A character that was quite difficult to realistically, you know, nail down to the ground. And I think that, you know, this version of Symphony is very hard to nail to the floor. So yeah, I can't see them actually using this design, but it's a horror character, you know, I like the design. If Blizzard takes anything from it, I would be, you know, I would be very happy, of course. But yeah, I can foresee her playing as a sort of ranged DPS. You play fairly far back. Her knives don't really have damage drop-off, but you can, of course, you know, they've got projectile speed. You can really easily haunt people from away, and if in the highest levels of play, you might even see people comboing stuff together, where perhaps you run Howl even, maybe, or you run Junker Queen to apply bleeds to people, and then you let her teleport in to finish them off. That's quite a potent bit of damage you're going to be piling into them. So yeah, that's Symphony. Overall, I think that this is probably one of my least likely characters to actually make it into the game, for quite, you know, for both those reasons. But who knows? Also, she is a horror-esque character, and the game tends to be quite upbeat. I mean, even, you know, some of the more brutal characters in it, like Roadhog, has a bit of a cartoony style to him, where they've just made him fat instead of making him too, you know, brutal. He's not like tearing people in half. And she is quite, I mean, if you look at the art, she's pretty spooky. But anyway, that's going to be it for Symphony. I'm going to finish this video because we've been recording for much longer than I expected. I can't believe it went for this long, but it did. So thank you very much for watching. I will see you guys in the next video. And if you'd like to buy anything from the Halloween Horrors collection, please go to the Battle.net store for $19.99. But yeah, sorry about the weird ordering and all of the continuity of these videos. But we are going to be getting straight into the next collection after this, and you'll see what that is. The Neb Remakes one, which has been named, and you'll see. Anyway, adios everyone, and before we leave, we have one final task to do, and that is to say sweet, sweet goodbye to you, and sweet, sweet goodbye to me. Adios.